Are we? It says live. It says, "Oh my God, are we live?" Oh
I
my
think
God.
so. You're live. We're live. We're gonna do it live.
That's all everybody ever says as soon as you say that, is that famous Bill O'Reilly thing.
And we're live on my Substack also. Well done, Pete.
Awesome. Well, everybody on Substack, please. I'm just a poor, independent. I live alone now. My dog just died. Listen, if you subscribe to Waj, there's a poor, sickly, white, bald man here that could use some of the heat that Waj has created for himself. And I would hope that you will subscribe to my Substack and all of what I'm doing, because I work so much harder than Waj, and there's so much more at stake for me. My kids are already grown up. His kids are still little. I'm white. He's brown. There's a lot that he has going for him that I don't. And you see what I'm saying?
I'm literally replacing Pete Dominick, and Pete Dominick is trying his best not to be replaced as a middle-aged, balding white man. And like I always said, Pete is proof that I love the whites. Some of my favorite whites are the progressive whites like Pete. And Pete Dominick, in all seriousness, folks, Pete Dominick had a fantastic show on Sirius for many years. He brought on so many fantastic different guests. I was one of them. And then Sirius made a mistake, didn't renew Pete's awesome show. So then Pete went independent before all of us. And then from his shed, he literally just is like a one-man rock band. He produces the show, books the show, edits the show. So he's had stand-up with Pete Dominick for years. And then he used to bring me on, and I'm trying to get Pete on Substack on the YouTubes. And Pete is dipping the toes in the water. But Pete is also one of those guys who's taken on the crazy whites and the Trumpy whites in his neighborhood, and they don't like him. And you've seen Pete on CNN. He's been very popular. Abby Phillips has brought on Pete as one of the good whites recently. And I wanted to ask you how you tolerate the vomitorium of bullshit that comes out of Scott Jennings's mouth.
Well, I don't tolerate any of it. Let's be clear. I mean, but it's just, it's a matter of like, I'll go wherever I'm invited, and not only because I'm desperate, but because I think we should. I think we should go and confront it. It's just hard when they don't stop talking. And when I was on Friday night, there was this Scott Jennings light or dark or heavy named Ben Ferguson. I mean, he was even worse than Scott in that he just wouldn't shut the fuck up. So that's hard.
Oh, yeah, he gish gallops. I had to take him on when I used to do Weekend on CNN with Ana Cabrera. His job is just to literally interrupt you when you're making accurate points.
Yeah. And at one point, he asked about the public opinion. Do people in Washington want all of these extra law enforcement, federal law enforcement there? And we were all like, no. And Abby's like, yeah, like 80% in a poll had said no. And she gave data, and he just ignored it. And just so did the Trump today. He's like, who are these people saying they don't want it? The vast majority of people in DC, however you cut it, however you pull it, go out on the street. I was just there on Saturday. Ask anybody. They don't want them there. It's a preposterous notion to say otherwise. But yeah, he just denies it. That's what they do, deny it. But just, I mean, I've already been replaced by so many brown and black people. And you know what they say, when you're a white and you get replaced by a brown or black person, you must be the worst of the whites. And maybe I am. Maybe I'm not as talented as some of the other whites, like your Fugelsang's. But, you know, Dino Badala directly replaced me. I mean, and
he's half white.
Maybe that's why.
So can I ask you, as a middle-aged balding white who's been replaced, how come you did not all of a sudden become a racist? Because I've been told for 10 years that it's the economic anxiety that has made so many whites support a Bulgarian criminal has openly gone fascist and declared his fascism earlier today. And it's that their economic anxiety that makes them support white supremacist talking points, and it's their economic anxiety that makes them quote Hitler. I'm very just disturbed why your rage and economic anxiety and midlife crisis has not all of a sudden transformed you, Pete, into an apologist for Nazis and white supremacists and white nationalists.
It is actually a fair question, because it's crazy to see certain people turn the way that they do. I think you were wrong when you said bald-ine. Like, I'm there and have been there for like 20 years. That's the only thing I would correct. But, you know, I think maybe the truth is, if you dangled like all kinds of money or opportunity in front of me to go change my view on things. Is you said, how specifically on race. I mean, I'm racist, just not against black people or Arab people. It's Malaysians that I really target the most.
Those Malaysians, they have it coming.
I think when someone says they're not racist, I want to be like, yeah, you are. Like, let's understand what that word means or what it means. Like, we're all bigoted. We're all biased towards any group of people that we're not really familiar with. So I have assumptions and stereotypes I make, especially in traffic. But the real serious answer to your question is, like, I think it truly is, like, I have so many people of color in my life, like intimate, close friends, like lots and lots and lots of people, lots of Jewish friends, lots of brown and black friends. And I know it sounds cliche or whatever, but like, I could never, they mean so much to me that the idea that I could ever do or say something that would go against them, especially when they're not in the room, is the antithesis of how I was raised and how I get up in the morning and how I want to role model for my daughters. So I also think that it's, really important to try to learn more and how to be more anti-racist, anti-sexist, and open-minded, especially the older and whiter you get, the more Dukes of Hazzard you tend to go. And I mean, I thought it was great what Mark Maron said about Bill Maher. I don't know if you heard that, but like,
well, you man, I really wanted to talk to you about this. This was literally what I was going to ask you next, because for those who don't know, Pete Dominick is also a stand-up comedian. He also used to be the opener for the Stephen Colbert Show. Pete, could have made a lot of money in the manosphere, brosphere, Rogan sphere that you and I have talked about a little bit. We've seen the radicalization over the past few years, and Pete, as a balding white, could have gone the route of Theo Vaughn's and the Rogans and all the comedy mothership. And I'm so happy that you're talking about Mark Maron, because I've been, not only have I been seeing it, and this was even before prep. I mean, just randomly today, I saw Mark Maron on a podcast, the same podcast, I think, where his diss of Bill Maher, I think, was very accurate. But he also then recommended a documentary on YouTube, but kind of like a YouTube video, which is 90 minutes long, made by someone called Elephants in the Graveyard, dissecting the Joe Rogan manosphere and the cult that is around Joe Rogan, and this comedy cult that is beholden to a narcissistic, insecure personalities. I'm just really curious if you saw that. Have you seen this discussion?
I don't even know what you're talking about. So I'm really happy to hear about that, and I'll look it up. I thought I'm like a big fan, and I've known Mark my whole life. Jon Stewart hired me, and John and Mark have always had no love lost, but their generation of comics that took on politics was post George Carlin. But it was, and it's older than me. They're, seniors where I was a freshman in comedy. But Jon Stewart, Bill Maher, and who am I just missing? Mark Maron are the three horsemen of kind of liberal political comedians of their generation. And so it's interesting to see how what directions they've all taken as they've flirted with mass media, as they've had different opportunities. But I mean, and I was on Joe Rogan. I was a guest on his show for 3 hours in November 2019. But Jon Stewart hired me. And then I went to Colbert. And I kind of tasted all that. And then I created the channel in that likeness at SiriusXM and brought in Fugelsang and Dean Obeidallah, who were the guys of the gentlemen of my generation, who are kind of political comedians. Just a few of, there's so many more. And so when you say I could have gone that direction, I mean, I couldn't. I could never sell out my ideals, even if I wanted to. There's no amount of money. If you said tomorrow, we'll pay you all this money to say this or change your view, I could never do it. My brother would never talk to me again. So like my family wouldn't. It was never a choice for me. It's at the root of all of who I am is trying to learn to be, to fight bullies. That's my brand, fighting bullies. I've done it my whole life in every place I've gone. And so for me,
can you tell people, Pete, what, for those who aren't in the know, Maron's constructive critique, and I think accurate critique and dissection of what Bill Maher has become?
So Mark Maron basically said that Bill Maher's desperate, a need to be relevant and to make money has changed his views to cater to another audience. I mean, I'm trying to find the exact quote, but that's basically it. And he said he's always had a problem with Bill Maher, and that Bill Maher is desperate. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. I really do. I've closely watched Bill Maher. I've also, I should say, been a guest on Real Time. I've done all these shows. I know all these people, and I've certainly watched their evolution. Watching Bill Maher, especially, and watching Joe Rogan evolve as a fascinating issue to talk about for a lot of reasons.
And, you know, for those who haven't followed, I think this is really important. This is not just insider baseball. You know, Pete and I have talked for a while about how the right wing has used culture, how the right wing has tapped into this type of insecurity, male loneliness, toxic masculinity, how the left or liberals or progressives weren't taking seriously how the right was co-opting culture, especially culture that is very appealing to men, wellness, fitness, comedy. Folks, UFC is an in-kind donation to Donald Trump and MAGA. Dana White, who's the CEO of UFC, was invited on election night. I've been telling people, I try to connect the dots, Pete, but people think I'm crazy. And actually, no, for the first time, you know what, Pete, for the first time, it's the world's worst. I told you so. It doesn't even make me feel good. All these people who thought we're nuts for the past 10 years, like, Wad, you were right. And I'm like, shit. And I'm getting like these new subscribers. I wish I got subscribers for other reasons, but I've been mentioning this data point. Dana White on election night gets invited by Donald Trump. Dana White takes the microphone and from the stage thanks Theo Vaughn, Joe Rogan, and the Nelk boys for helping Donald Trump win the election, right? And then Mark Maron, and the reason why I'm just like really happy that finally someone is taking him on is Mark Maron, while he's promoting his latest comedy special, which came out in August, a couple of weeks ago, he's gone on every podcast and given constructive critique and criticism about Joe Rogan, the cult of Rogan, the manosphere bro type of comedy that has developed around Joe Rogan, and why it's bad for not only comedy, but bad for America, and how these people have either been willingly used and are complicit and have made money, or they're dupes. And now that I finally see Mark Maron taking like the lance and piercing it, you're seeing South Park come out and use mockery. You're finally seeing, if you will, the Teflon nature of these people finally being exposed. And what I just went on YouTube, I just saw it today because I heard Mark Maron talk about it, I think on the John Levitt Pod Save America. He said it's called The Elephant Graveyard. That's the YouTube channel. And this guy just did it by himself. It's a 90-minute kind of thesis called How Comedy Was Destroyed by an Anti-Reality Doomsday Cult. And he calls Joe Rogan, what he's developed in Texas, Comedy Jonestown. It has 1.2 million views, came out 7 days ago. I've seen like an hour and 10 minutes of it. He brings all the receipts. I think it's very good. But for those who think this is just inside baseball, it's directly connected to culture, toxic masculinity, misogyny, the use and abuse of comedians and UFC and this type of alpha male conspiracy theories, and how it's all connected to the MAGA anti-reality delusion that they're feeding their base. But I want your take on this because you're a comedian, you know these people.
Yeah, I do. It's particularly Joe. I know Joe. I know Mark really well. And I just texted him because I've been loving this show Stick on Apple Plus. Mark Maron's become a really good actor. But I've known Mark my whole career because when I started in stand-up comedy, he was a veteran and I was in the clubs every night and he was always cool to me. It's funny because he made a lot of his bones about like confronting people that he'd given a hard time or that had issues with around ego and whatever as he came up in comedy, which is pretty common. And it would never have to do with that with me because I always revered him. I always knew what he was doing. I always respected what he was doing. I always liked him a lot. And he was kind to me. He wasn't a dick to me ever, like a lot of other comedians who are also generally speaking pretty good guys. But I think what you said about, and we've talked about this before, is one of the best talks we've had when we talk about masculinity and manhood and all of our own stuff. I think that's the point here. And that's what separates Mark from Bill Maher and from Rogan and from some of these other manosphere comedians, especially, is that Mark has always talked about his own problems and been vulnerable. And that appeals to a huge segment of Americans and a huge number of, let's say, white straight guys even. You know, there's a lot of white straight guys that find that stuff attractive, that want to be more like that. It's better to be like that because you're not in this chamber of pain and chaos and as scared of demons and your own kind of lack of vulnerability that you think you have to be this strong stoic type, and the stoic with a capital S. I'm not talking about or I should say small s stoic, because I'm really into stoicism. I love that a lot, but it also is about being honest and vulnerable and transparent. And the thing that's always pissed me off about Joe, always been nice to me too. Rogan had me on after Sirius canned me. We had a contentious but great conversation. At the end of it, he's like, are we hanging out tonight? And I was visiting family in LA, so I passed. But the point is, he was, we ended on good terms. That was before COVID. What happened with Joe during COVID, like, I don't know if COVID broke him, but the point I like to make and tell people behind the scenes is Joe has the contact numbers of the best vaccine experts in the country. Specifically, Peter Hotez is a good friend of mine and has been for years. I've been interviewing Peter. I would consider him a friend. Peter was on Joe's show. Peter is a hero. He saved millions of lives in underdeveloped countries with the vaccines that he and his partners have made. And Joe stopped having him on, Waj. And why? Yep. Or why not have him on with some of these guys that like to just ask questions? Like, he knows better. And I know that I'm positive that Peter, because he told me on the record, texted him and said, why are you talking about this stuff? Why don't you still have me on? And Joe just ignored it. And it's not okay, because children died. Like, this is such an important...
Children are dying. Measles. Children are dying.
And they elect now, because of these guys that are conspiracy theorists, they are now in charge. I mean, you've seen the latest news from Worm Brain. Every day, it's something insane. He just appointed some guy to be the head of COVID vaccines. I try not to make fun of people's appearances, Waj, but this guy made some choices to look that way. I mean, let me see if I can bring him up.
They want to ban COVID vaccines, folks, and vaccine hesitancy has gone up. Measles is skyrocketing. They're gutting the National Institute of Health. Yeah, that's a choice. There you go. I trust him.
This guy's making choices. Do you want to trust that guy with your health?
I'll give you ivermectin and some turmeric. I'm like, I just want the vaccine. Try ivermectin and turmeric, bro. And how about some weed? I don't smoke weed. I'll give the weed to Pete. But can I just have a vaccine? But no, I think you made a very good point that these folks say we're just comedians. No, folks, they're not just comedians. Joe Rogan, Andrew Schultz, the Nelk Boys, Theo Vaughn, all these people are complicit. They realized that their base was right-wing. They realized that their base was MAGA. So they went along with it. They platformed it. They mainstreamed it, right? They got rich off it, folks. They got rich off it. Oh, yeah. And they were perfectly fine with it. And I want to remind people that when it came to inauguration, who was there on Inauguration Day? Joe Rogan, folks. And so they're all copying Trump. They're all copying Joe Rogan. They all take their saunas and their cold plunge baths, and they all just parrot him because it's a ticket to wealth. But that ticket to wealth came at a price, at the expense of the marginalized, at expense of trans people, at expense of women, at expense of democracy, and expense of, like you said, literally the health of our children. And that's why I like Mark. I don't know him, but if you know him, tell him Waj says thank you, because I've been promoting as much as possible. Because he says, what more do you guys want? You completely took away the rights of transgender people. You can say the R word, right? Because Andrew Schultz says, I want to say the word retard. Congratulations. You could say retard. You could say the F word, right? Trans people are like terrified for their lives. You won. What more is there? If you have nothing left, then maybe you're just a hack. I remember George Carlin said this too. George Carlin, years ago, because you're a stand-up comedian, I'm just a fan of the art form. George Carlin, when Andrew Dice Clay was taken off, he went on Larry King and said, Andrew should be careful, because a lot of these young men are coming to see Andrew, and Andrew's Jewish. And, if you start making fun of women and you start making fun of like gays, they don't like Jews either. So you want to be careful about punching down. And that's all that they do, is that they punch down, and they're bad for comedy. I saw their stand-up specials. It's not funny, Pete. Like, at least be funny.
I mean, you can make punching down funny. I think it's really hard to do. I think sometimes mean jokes are the funniest jokes, especially when they're about an individual. But it's, as Mark said, there's no courage there. You're not speaking truth to power, which is, if you want to do political humor, that's what you're supposed to do as a comedian, not punching down. It was weird to me when I started this during comedy too, when certain comedians would be constantly making fun of their wives and of women. I mean, it had been so done, for decades, and all those jokes were just so overdone, and it just seemed like, and so I started talking about my wife in a good way, and how I was the weak link, how you always talk about Sarah. I mean, like that there's a lot of comedy to be had. There's so much on the bone. The idea that you're going after, as they did in my community and so many across the country, trans kids, that that they would attack trans kids like they were aggressors, like they were going to sexually assault your child in the bathroom. And as I said at a town hall meeting, which nobody liked me for, but I said, like, my daughters, I have daughters in high school, they're not worried that a trans girl is going to come into the restroom and hurt them. They're worried about the trans girl hurting herself, because that's the way more likely situation. Because to be a trans child, not all the time, and I'm happy if some kids are really confident in their transition, they know what they're doing, but it's pretty confusing and people don't necessarily accept you. You're much more likely to be hiding in the corner than, certainly not, attracting attention to yourself and attacking kids. They always want the idea that any comedian, as Mark talked about, would like talk about trans people. It's so weak. It shows how weak you are, how stupid, how unoriginal. I guess I got to do my trans joke. No, you don't. You don't have.
It's been done, and also it's hack. It's been done. What more do you like? What more do you want? It's been done for 5 years. They're now like they lost all their rights. What more do you want?
Why attack vulnerable people? Like, why not just do jokes about Christopher Reeves being paralyzed? Like, go all the way, I mean, why not?
How about this? Why not make jokes about Elon Musk, who's a freak? How about Peter Thiel? How about the billionaires? How about the 1%? How about Donald Trump with cankles? And the reason why they don't, because they realize where their bread is buttered, how their bread is buttered, and also because I think they reflect Donald Trump. These men are ultimately very weak. And that documentary I was talking about, Elephants in the Graveyard, made it. Joe Rogan was bullied as a kid, folks. That's why he got into UFC. Tony Hinchcliffe, remember that comedian who made all those racist jokes at Madison Square Garden?
But
he was bullied.
I don't know where you're going with this. So was I. So was everybody.
No, what I'm saying is you dealt with it. I was bullied too. You and I dealt with it.
I bullied you. I still bully.
Yeah, you were the one that bullied me and told me to get out. I'm like, you're the one who invited me to your podcast. Why is that? But in addition to being bullied, Pete, we talked about this. A lot of these guys also have daddy issues. Elon Musk was not only bullied, but he said a terrible childhood. Tony Hinchcliffe, his dad rejected him, right? So you see these men. I was talking to my friends about this yesterday, and I think I've talked about you about this. We're talking about these men in our communities, otherwise educated men, informed men, people who go the UFC, Rogan type of men have to be men. What I've seen is this, folks. Anyone who voluntarily retweets Andrew Tate or says he has some good ideas. I've done Wajahat Ali's own research, independent study. Every single man who falls down deep in this Rogan, manosphere, Tate sphere, every single one has trauma from a previous relationship, is in a bad marriage right now, and or has some daddy problems. Every single one, Pete. Not a single one is in a happy, secure relationship.
That's a fine and good and accurate psychological diagnosis of a lot of these people. But the phrase hurt people.
Yeah.
I don't love it, because my answer to that is not always. Sure, some do, but I know a lot of people who suffered all kinds of abuse, you name it, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, all kinds of traumas as children, but they learn to break the chain. They learn to triumph over it. And I'm not saying everybody can, but you're right to talk about the psychological roots.
No, I'm not giving an excuse, Pete. I'm saying there's a weakness inside them and an insecurity that they must perform as the alpha. Tony Hinchcliffe, all he does is bully people. He doesn't even do kill Tony. I saw that and I felt kind of queasy. I'm like, you just bring on people to humiliate. Joe Rogan, right? He's God King. Whatever he says, everyone else agrees, right? They mock and ridicule the weak and the lower folks. And then what they do, much like Donald Trump, is they say that they're the victims. I'm defending free speech. I'm going against the woke and the politically incorrect. No safe spaces. And what you really look at it with Trump and MAGA, safe space for me, no safe space for thee. Civility for me, cruelty for thee, right? That's what it is at the end of the day.
We should do an episode where we just break myths of long-held right-wing ideological views, and I'll throw out two. But one is that Republicans are fiscally conservative. No,
it's all projection.
And two, that it's liberals and Democrats that are canceling. No. The worst kind of cancellation you could possibly do would be to come from the United States government. Republicans, long before Trump, were eliminating words. in government documents like the Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission. That's how much of a nerd I am, and that's how much I've been doing this, and I covered it. That was the commission created by Democrat bipartisan commission to investigate the root causes of the financial meltdown of 2008 that some people are now saying did more damage to this country than the Great Depression. In that inquiry commission, they said you could not use the word deregulation. Republicans got rid of the word that was the main cause. Same thing with climate. You can't use greenhouse gases. You can't use words. Now they're
bans. How about today? How about today? His executive order against flag burning. That's just literally from today.
I am for that. Actually, I think you should be in jail for decades if you burn a flag. He said today, if you burn a flag, you're going to go to jail for a year. Somebody's going to test this. I hope it's a well-known person.
I hope it's a white. I hope it's a Republican white.
Well, it has to be a white. The whites have to lead. That's the other thing that is really important. And that's a huge problem right now, is that white folks overwhelmingly are not paying attention, and they're not outraged because we are doing well. As you know, I have an above ground pool. I don't live there anymore because I was removed. But no, I mean, like the point is, we are doing well. We're fat and happy. Not all white people. A lot of white people are living paycheck to paycheck and suffering and so on. But I'm telling you, one of the issues is the silence and complicity of so many apathetic white people who, until their life somehow becomes easier, until they have a healthcare bill that they can't pay for, until there's pollutants in their water, until something they lose their access to health insurance or whatever it might be. We're not going to have people in the streets, people calling for a general strike and so on. Like I've heard Danielle call for that. And it's like, I love black people saying these things, but white people are not doing that as long as there's a sale at Target. Like, we're not there yet, and I don't know necessarily how we get there, but that's the problem. That's definitely the problem.
I blame you, because as the sole representative of all whites, the fact that you have not been able to lead your people out of the wilderness into wokeness falls squarely on your bald head, sir. And I feel like if you had more hair on your head, maybe they would listen to you. So that is your genetic inferiority at play.
Too often I've been alone, and I've thought of quitting a few times. I was once at a school board meeting. It was literally just me giving my 3 minutes supporting the LGBT community. And I looked around and I was like, is there no one here? No one.
No, Pete's been in the fight, but I think it's a very important point you made. And I was just talking to Crystal Ball, and I said the same thing when we were signing off. And I said, as a person of color, it's so important. This country just values whiteness more. It just does. You guys get paid more, you're more in position of power. When a centrist white or conservative white says the same thing that my co-host Danielle, a black woman, has said for years, they all of a sudden say, I think he's onto something, right? And so when you had Jennifer Welsh openly going viral by going against, the triple Trump whites.
She basically said, I'm so sick of these white people benefiting from the work, the labor, the products of brown people. Stop going into a Mexican restaurant. Stop. My neighbor across the street has a whole crew of landscapers that come once or twice a week or a month. And inside he's watching Fox News, and then he's posted on Facebook anti-immigrant stuff. They're literally working at his house. And so it's so obvious.
And also, like you, Crystal, when you have white folks echoing this and saying this, it gives a permission structure then for other whites to come out of the woodworks. Even Mark Maron. Mark is Jewish, but Ashkenazi Jewish mainstream comedian, like you said, that old guard of, and I'm not using old as a pejorative, but like him, Jon Stewart, and others, right? When they say this, and even Bill Maher, even though smug, patting himself on the back, he's going to go towards martial law. Mother effer, you sat there and filleted him at a dinner in April, like we remember. But whatever, him saying this, is echoing what we say, and then more and more Americans say, I think he might be onto something. And I do think, I really say this one, and I've talked to Danielle a lot about this. Danielle's my co-host of Democracy for people who are watching. Danielle says this one's for the whites. Like, we're going to protect ourselves. Yeah. We're done leading. We got to take care of our families. The whites have to be on the street. And I do believe, I hate saying this, but just knowing America, when white people are pissed off, when white people are free with Luigi, when white people are out there with their guns, when there are white folks at the No Kings rally, when there are white folks in DC, when white people are pissed off and aggrieved, change happens. And specifically, what I've said is the reason why the Epstein scandal is hurting Trump, Pete, is that MAGA is the one leading it. It was in the Wall Street Journal that it got published. New York Post followed up with it. You see it on Twitter. And then MAGA and conservatives leading with it gave the permission structure for corporate America and Democrats to follow through.
I think everything you said is so vitally important. I'll never forget when I know where I was when I read the statistic. I was preparing for my old show, and I read, it was like a Pew survey or a Gallup survey, one of the two, that said something like 61% of white Americans said in a survey that they feel like they are more discriminated against than people of color.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's been consistent. And also NPR verified that majority of whites in the past 10 years feel like they're the most scapegoated community.
This was 10 years ago. And I've spent a lot of time trying to find those people and have thoughtful conversations with them. But it's there, and there's plenty of them, but it is a huge issue alone. Just that idea that thinking, and a lot of that thinking comes from right-wing media telling them every day how bad it has gotten and so on. And that's how they get ratings, and that's how they divide people. I wanted to mention another comedian who I used to be very close friends with, Bill Burr. Bill has done a really good job with anti-racist humor. And he's done a lot of like sexist material too, which a lot of women don't like, a lot of feminists don't like, but comedians are complicated. He's complicated. But his anti-racist humor is one thing. But the other thing, Bill's done a really good job, because we were talking about, why are we going after vulnerable people? Like, no one's funnier talking about billionaires than Bill Burr in comedy, in terms of stand-up comedians. And I sometimes wonder, like, obviously Carlin was great at it, but like there's a lot of meat on that bone to go after. There, unfortunately, are too many billionaires. And the idea that people are morally okay with a billionaire existing is unfathomable. I would never debate someone on that. If you want to, should billionaires exist? The debate. I'm like, no debate. You suck. It's terrible. What are you talking about?
And I love how he keeps a laser focus on it, and it's pissed off all the MAGA folks. He goes, "Oh, see, I think it was last week I heard him. He goes, "Oh, so you're getting after the El Salvadorans? Yeah, that'll make sure the billionaires pay you all more money." He's laser focused on taking on the billionaires, and he's mining a lot of gold out of it, and he's getting a lot of respect, and he's taking on the class wars, and he's basically, what he's trying to remind people is the old school divide and conquer technique of the Southern strategy, right? If you tell white folks, don't worry about Rupert Murdoch stealing your money, but look at this black. They're like, look at the black. But what Bill Burr is doing as a white Irish Catholic dude from Boston, he's like, no, your enemy isn't that Mexican guy freaking doing the dishes, or the El Salvadoran guy picking the fruit, or that Muslim guy. It's Rupert Murdoch and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, these freaks who are taking all the money for themselves. And a lot of the base, because he's a white man, say, I think he's onto something. Well, and you see... Well, go ahead.
Well, Bill is, and just if we're still talking about him for one more moment, like, it's interesting because comedians, like a lot of other people, certainly men and women in comedy, they want the approval of their peers. And like, I came up with Bill, and no one, there's not a comedian that came up with him that would say he's a bad comedian. Some might say, I don't think he's funny, but no one would say he's a bad comedian. Everybody knows he's a great comedian. So they all want his approval. But a lot of these guys would never confront Bill Burr to his face with their nonsense. And when they do, you've seen Bill Burr, who's friends with Rogan.
He takes him out.
He embarrassed Rogan a number of times, like really called him out. And the thing that's important is Rogan in that moment knew who was right. He knows the alpha in the conversation between Bill Burr and Joe Rogan. The alpha is Bill Burr. Could Rogan beat the shit out of him? Sure, but that's not how we measure things. Certainly in comedy, it's who's funnier, who's smarter, who's tougher. And the other thing about Burr is he came up in what was called, not we, black folks called it, the Chitlin circuit.
Oh, yeah. Chitlin circuit.
Black comedy rooms, black comedy clubs, black audiences. And Bill was one of the best and only white guys that could perform in front of a black audience. I'm proud to say I did really well in front of black audiences, but there was only a few of us. And once Patrice O'Neill recognized you, you were a made man in that world. Patrice, I don't have a lot of good things to say about, but he was hilarious too, and good friends with Bill. But wherever that comes from, whether it's his musical influence in terms of his anti-racism and so on, and now he's married to a black woman. He's got 2 mixed race kids, so he can't help but see the life through their eyes and so on. But the bottom line is, like, however people come to being anti-racist, to being open-minded, to not punching down. But now we're in a country where the masks are off, the hoods are on, and the fitness lady can relitigate slavery on CNN. Should have never been invited, should have never spoken.
You weren't on with her, right?
No, I wish it was.
And you know, Bill, I will say this about Bill, watching his career. Bill's a guy who at this stage of his life, his last stand-up special, Drop Dead Years, is something that you and I have talked about. And I feel like we were all kind of in sync, because he was talking about how like all this rage and anger and loneliness goes unchecked in men and what it does. And I thought that was his strongest comedy special in a long time. And you could see him on this journey of being a bit more vulnerable and open, because, you know, he had this misogyny and this anger and this rage in his earlier sets, which was funny, but off-putting. And now he admits it. And he admits like he had to work on himself. And now, like, so it shows you this guy who's blunt, who's contrarian, who pisses off Democrats and Republicans, who's a Boston guy, who's politically incorrect. He can mind these things, bring it full circle to your initial point, to the 900 people watching us on my Substack. Hey, everyone. And all the people watching on Twitter and on Pete's channel. That you can be vulnerable. You can be honest. You could punch up. You can learn. You can have growth. You know, you don't have to be a douchebag high school bully like Rogan and Trump and all these other a-holes like Kash Patel, these broken men. There's another path forward. And then you see the power of mockery. And I wanted to ask you about this. I got to leave in 3-4 minutes, but South Park, I've been loving what South Park's been doing in the last 3 episodes.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it both ways in terms of South Park is doing this little penis joke every way they can. And it seems so kind of hacky and unoriginal to make small dick jokes, but they know, sadly, that that's a thing that matters to Trump and to his supporters. They know, and that's why they're doing it every which way that they can. And, you know, obviously, I think it's great. And I think that mockery and humor is important. And somebody said recently, I think it was Frank Bruni on Real Time. Yeah, I listened to it. I'm sorry. That it's not working for Gavin Newsom to do what he's doing, making a mockery of Trump. And it's never worked. They say we've been doing it for 10 years and it's never worked. I hate that kind of shit, trying to prove a negative. Oh, the war on poverty hasn't worked. Yeah, it has. There'd be a lot more poor people. Things would be a lot worse if we weren't making fun of them and speaking about them as openly and as courageously as we can on every platform every day, which is why we're never going to stop doing it until I'm Kilmar Abrego Garcia's roommate.
You know, I might join you in Uganda. I'll bring the halal meat. You bring the bald head, and we'll find a way to do our shtick together. But also, folks, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, who you know, Pete has talked to many times. I've talked to many times. A scholar on authoritarianism has openly said that mockery is a main weapon to use against strongmen and fascists and leaders. It has been used in the Middle East. It has been used in the past. Mel Brooks has been using it his entire life against Hitler. It cuts them down to size. It preys upon their insecurities. It shows them to be weak, fragile men. And Donald Trump right now is at his weakest and his most fragile, both physically and in the poll numbers. There's more of us than there are of them. Mock them, ridicule them, laugh at them, never bend the knee, folks. Stand up for the marginalized, because you think you'll be safe until you aren't. Because first they went after trans folks, then they went after the pro-Palestinian activists, then they went after the undocumented, then they went after the legal immigrants. Now they're going after, well, anyone and everyone. And like I told Crystal, Mike Pence, the whitest, most Christian conservative man on earth, who was the vice president of Donald Trump, even he wasn't safe. He was running for his life on January 6th, folks. So it's all of us together. This is it. It's all of us together. It ain't going to be perfect, but this is the multiracial tossed salad of America, right? Pete's kids, my kids are going to live in this country. And we might not agree on everything, but do we agree that we should live with security and peace? I think yes. And the final thing I'll say is, I'm not a sociopath. I do not need MAGA to suffer in order to feel great again. I want people to have affordable health care. I want people not to be like Aquaman and swimming due to climate change. I want people to have economic opportunities. I want people to have a high quality education. I want people to get vaccinated, right? That's what I want for people to not just feel, but be great again. That's what I want for all of our kids. And if you're against that, you might just be a sociopath. Pete, it's your show. Final word to you.
Well, I just wanted to get your take on this thesis. Is something I've been thinking about for a long time. But like, again, I'm generalizing about white folks, and again, talking comedy. We have such a hard time laughing at ourselves, especially white conservatives. I'm not saying white conservatives aren't funny or can't be funny. I would never say that. I think that people who say that, they might not be funny to you. This comedian, that joke, that thing might not be funny to you, but it's funny to a lot of people. But the difference tends to be when it comes to liberal comedians, we tend to look inward at ourselves and our own people and make fun of ourselves. And that is a sign of confidence. That is a sign of confidence. And also, decency is a sign and signal of strength. Like Jimmy Carter, he was a very strong man. And so I think that white folks, liberal folks, are far more likely to look at ourselves, our family, the people that we care about, and certainly our culture, and make fun of it. And it's crazy when white conservatives can't do that, and they have to poke fun at people that aren't like them. Not always. It's a generalization, but it's something I find comes true all the time. And it really is an important observation to make, because we've got to be able to be confident, to lead. We have to be able to look at ourselves and see what's wrong with ourselves so that we can grow to be better people. That's not a secret. All deep thinkers have always thought that. And I, being the influencer that I am, just wanted to put a fine point on it. That's a white.
Amen. And, all forms of supremacy, religious supremacy, white supremacy, all stem from insecurity and an unwillingness to look inward and confront the realities that exist. And instead, you create an artificial reality and you punch down. And ultimately, fascists, like I said, come for everyone. White supremacy, in addition to being destructive and dumb, has always been self-destructive, folks. And these people who align themselves with these ideologies, they're always masking some pain. And ultimately, they are broken men and women.
What you've done in the last couple of years, especially, you've working on this your whole life, but what you've done in the last couple of years, what I'm trying to do, certainly, and it's most important, as you wrote recently and have been talking about, like, fascism is here. We're in it. It's arrived. The militarization, you just wrote about this, the militarization of our streets. And I think that just what you're doing every day, we need to realize this is where we're at. The best thing you can do is what you're doing, what I'm doing. Build community. Build community. No matter where we are in the end or storyline or whatever, you have to build community. Protect other people. Do things with your hands. Do good things. Make friends. We're in it, folks. We're in it right now. The best thing you can do, my advice, and everywhere I go, I'm trying to say this, build community. Whether it's one person at a time, a few people, or certainly online, the way that we're doing here. That's the most important thing we can do to get through this in any way. You have to build community. So keep up the great work.
Folks, we're in it, but we're in it together. There are 1,000 people watching on Substack. Thanks so much. And don't take advice from that guy. Take advice from your doctor, please. My wife's a doctor. She's begging you. There's a reason why vaccines have saved lives. Measles and polio used to kill people. Please, just try not to die. Just try not to be like, don't win the Darwin Awards, folks. Win another award. This has been The Left Hook and Stand Up with Pete Dominick. Pete show, it's a daily show. Please subscribe on Substack. Listen to his podcast. This is The Left Hook. It's all free, no paywalls. I have the great Qasim Rashid on right now. So as soon as I sign off with Pete, I'm going to talk to Qasim Rashid. He's fantastic. And we'll have Pete on hopefully more regularly now that we figured out technology.
Yes. Thanks, buddy. Talk to you soon.
Take care, man.
Bye, everybody.